2 Samuel chapter 4, verse 4. It says, Jonathan, Saul's son. Everybody say Saul's son. Saul was the first king over Israel. Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son whose feet were crippled. He was 5 years old when the news of the death of Saul, King Saul, and his son Jonathan came from Jezreel. And the boy's nurse picked him up and fled. But it happened that while she was hurrying to flee and to run with the child in her arms, he fell and became lame. His name was Mephibosheth. Everybody say this wonderful name with me. Everybody say Mephibosheth. Come on, everybody say it. Say Mephibosheth. Okay, here we go. Saul, king over Israel. A little history here. Saul, first king over Israel. Jonathan, King Saul's son. Mephibosheth is Jonathan's son, so King Saul's grandson, Mephibosheth. King Saul and his son Jonathan was in a battle and they both were killed. Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son, was 5 years old in the care of his nurse or babysitter at the palace. During the time of his father and grandfather's death, he was at the palace. And Mephibosheth, the babysitter, the nurse, when she heard of the death of King Saul and Jonathan, the grandfather and the father of Mephibosheth, she picked up Mephibosheth in a hurry. Everybody say, in a hurry. Say, in a hurry. Hey, have you ever gotten in a hurry and dropped something? My question is, and please, you got to stay with me, how many of us have been dropped? Because somebody got in a hurry. I've had to look at this from both sides of the mirror. How many people have I dropped because I got in a hurry? Not doing it intentionally. Everybody, I'm telling you, everybody is in a hurry today. And if you're not careful, you're going to drop some important things. But stay with me now. And Mephibosheth's nurse, when she heard of the death of King Saul and Jonathan, she picked up Mephibosheth in a hurry and started running, but in her haste, she dropped him, injuring him in both of his feet, crippled. Everybody say crippled. We need to understand why the nurse, why the babysitter was in such a hurry. Some say that she was frantic. I believe that she was frantic, and she had a reason. She was moving in haste, moving in a hurry, because David was to become king over Israel. When the new king took over the kingdom in that day, the bloodline of the old king was eliminated, so that there would be no competition or uprising from the family of previous rulers. That's why the nurse was frantic. That's why she was in a hurry. She was in a hurry to save the life of Mephibosheth, but in saving his life, she dropped him and he was crippled in both feet. Now, let's go to Samuel, 2 Samuel chapter 9, verses 1 through 5. Now David is king. Everybody say David is king. David is sitting on the throne under the crown in Jerusalem. David is the king. David said, is there anyone left of the house, the family of Saul, to whom I may show kindness for Jonathan's sake? There was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba. So they called him to David, and King David said to him, are you Ziba? He said, I am your servant. And the king said, is there no longer anyone left of the house, the family of Saul, to whom I may show goodness and graciousness and the graciousness of God? Everybody say grace shown. Ziba replied to King David, "There is still a son of Jonathan, one whose feet are crippled." So the King David said to him, "Where is he?" And Ziba replied to the king, "He is in the house of Machir, the son of Emily, in Lodabar." Then King David sent word and had Mephibosheth brought from the house of Machir, the son of Ammiel, from Lodabar. Okay, now stay with me. Let's get some context going here after the reading of the word. Jonathan and David, we know, had a covenant. I'm not going to get into all of that. According to 1 Samuel 20. David was honoring the covenant between himself and Jonathan. But you also have to remember that David was the armor bearer of King Saul, and Saul invited him into the palace, and it was David that began to play on the harp and on the instruments and sing, and he chased off evil spirits. He was known in the land. The maidens sang songs about how Saul had killed his thousands, but David had killed tens of thousands. And King Saul got jealous and put a bounty out on David's head. Stay with me. But now we see David as king, and all of a sudden, David is wanting to honor Saul. He's wanting to show honor to Saul and to Jonathan, with whom he had made and kept the part of his covenant. Now watch this. How many of you with me so far? Say yes. King David said, "Is there anyone left at the house of Saul that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Verse 3. The word was delivered, "Jonathan has a son who is lame in both of his feet. He is crippled in both of his feet." Verse 4. And King David said, "Where is he?" "He is in the house of Machir, the son of Ammiel, in Lodabar." Everybody say it with me. Say, Mephibosheth lives in Lodabar. I want to talk to you about where Mephibosheth lived and where many people live today. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, they live in a place called Lodabar. They live in a place where something has happened to them that has caused a low self-esteem, low self-confidence. They don't trust anybody anymore. I'm not going to talk about my situation to you. I've tried to talk to people about it before, and I am just going to be quiet. But you got to remember, Mephibosheth knew what it was to live in the palace. Mephibosheth knew what it was to play in the king's courtyard. Mephibosheth knew what it was to sleep in the palace and to wake up in the palace and to run into the throne room and see his grandfather and his father. Do you realize that he was in line to become king over Israel? Mephibosheth. Stay with me. I want to talk to you about where Mephibosheth lived, from the palace to Lodabar. He lived in a place called Lodabar. He lived there physically. Today, Lodabar is a place mentally, emotionally, at times spiritually. Why is it important to understand this? Lodabar, the meaning of Lodabar, when you separate the prefix, lo, in the Hebrew means not, no, non. It means nah. Everybody goes, nah. You going to go to the store today? Nah. You want to talk about it? Nah. No. And then it also means never. The word lo, the prefix lo. And when you define dabar, it means to speak, to say, to talk, to tell, to utter, to converse. When you put it all together, it means I have nothing to talk about. Lodabar means, listen, you know how come people don't trust people? I'm not talking about it. Because I'm not going to spill my stuff. I just want to start new, but it's still there. Stay with me now. Stay with me. You got to hear it all. Everybody say, hear it all. When you put all that together, it means I have nothing to talk about. I don't have anything to say. I have no words. I'm not going to get into a conversation. Lodabar means a place without pasture. It also indicates that Lodabar was an insignificant town where there's just nothing to talk about. I don't have anything to say. Well, let me ask you, what happened to your feet, Mephibosheth? I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to. Well, where'd you come from? I don't want to talk about it. Knowing that he was in the line of royalty. How many of you hear what I'm saying? Stay with me because I'm prophesying to this house this morning. Over this house. Lodabar. Do you know how many people outside these four walls are? Let me get come on, let's get in. How many people inside this house? How many people here today? Lodabar. When you put it all together, it means nothing to speak of, nothing to talk about. I don't have anything to say. No words, no conversations. Lodabar is not at all a desirable place to visit, let alone a place where you would want to live. Matter of fact, people don't live in Lodabar because it's their choice. Understand, they don't live there because they've committed some sin or because they've done something wrong. Lodabar is a place you live when life does not work out the way, ma'am, you expected. It's a place where life does not work out the way that you expected. I wonder how many of us had the American dream, yellow house trimmed in white picket fence, green lawn, husband going to work, coming home, dinner on the table, all this stuff, or ever what your American dream is. I wonder how many of us had and then all of a sudden, things just not working out the way you planned. Listen, do you know how many people outside these four walls' life is not working out the way they planned? Let me take you downtown, and I'll show you some people that are highly educated people walking the streets, and they have a vocabulary that's unbelievable. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that me and a friend of mine went to it was years ago now since we started the church, but we went over to the oleanders that surround the zoo. You know where I'm talking about? And we would set up tables out there and we would witness to these people and they would come and we would give them water and we would slice open watermelon and feed them watermelon. And I was talking to this one guy, and I'm not kidding you, his vocabulary was unbelievable. I was thinking, dude, I don't even know what you're saying. Are you making this stuff up? And then finally one day I asked him after we created a relationship, I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm a lawyer. And then he told me why he ended up in those oleanders. He ended up in the oleanders because he gave some advice to a certain people. They did not take his advice and they went ahead and they built in a certain area. And it was an area that was very, very precious to some people. And he said, when they went against that, I said, I'm done. Man, we would go out there and we'd take him and he'd just sit and he would talk, man. And there was times he was kind of hard, but he was soft. And he never really opened up about it because there were some things when you would say, well, what about this? And he'd say, I don't want to talk about it because it hurts so bad. Stay with me. That guy went on. Thank God we want him to Jesus, and he went home to be with the Lord. Lodabar. People don't live in Lodabar because it's their choice. Understand, they don't live there because they've committed some great sin or because they've done something wrong. Lodabar is a place you live when life doesn't work out the way that you planned. For this man that we found in those oleanders, life did not work out the way that he planned. When life doesn't work out the way you expected, when life takes a sudden turn, and it's not because of choices that you have made, it's because of choices and decisions that other people have made, but you end up injured or damaged. And it wasn't something they planned. She picked up Mephibosheth, and she was in a hurry and by accident. Do you know how many people get hurt by accident? It wasn't something that was planned. Mephibosheth was dropped on accident. And now he's crippled in both of his feet. And now he escapes to a place called Lodebar, a place that has no pastures, a place where nobody talks, where nobody knows anything about anybody. So if they come looking for those that belong to the family of Saul, I don't know. Look, I don't know. Is there anybody here in Lodebar that is of the lineage of, I don't know. Because nobody talks, nobody knows anything. So there's, how many of you with me? How many stay with me because we're setting a foundation here. Now watch. When life takes a sudden turn and because of other people's choices, people become damaged, people become hurt. And it wasn't something that was planned or meant to happen. It was an accident. You were raised all your life without a father. And it wasn't your fault. And you feel the effects. Mom and daddy got a divorce. It wasn't your fault. But daddy found another woman, married her. Mama found another man, married him. And they're all happy. But I feel the pain. I feel the loss. I feel the damage. I feel the hurt. I'm insecure, the low self-esteem, the problems, the anger, the jealousy, the resentment, the shame. And I wasn't even asked or considered about this. But we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. I didn't make the choice. The choice was made, but it had an effect on me. All this stuff comes my way. It wasn't Mephibosheth's fault that daddy died, the nurse dropped him, the doctor couldn't fix him, and he lives in Lodebar. Understand there's a lot of things that is not your fault. I want you to say something to me. And there's some things that possibly are our fault. But right now I want you to say this concerning certain areas. I want you to say, it's not my fault. He knows your heart. And that's not a cop-out. He knows your heart. Stay with me. Understand there's a lot of things that is not your fault, but the decisions, the choices, the actions of other people that did not mean to do anything wrong. All of a sudden, it affects you mentally and emotionally and at times spiritually. And they didn't mean anything by it. I'm going to say it like this, and I'm not saying this in a nonchalant. People just get in a hurry sometimes. I'm not the type of guy, if I go to a church somewhere and nobody comes up and shakes my hand, I don't care. I don't. That's no big deal to me. I'm just, it's no big deal. But there are some people that they like to have their hand shaken. There's some people, we have so many different types of things that affect us. Some things don't bother you. Some things bother me. Some things that bother me don't bother you. But listen, we all have feelings. And those feelings are connected to emotions. And you can keep on covering things up. You can keep on putting Band-Aids on things. But listen, there's something that God is wanting to say to this house today and to speak over this house, to people in this house and to people outside of this house, and for this house to begin to prepare yourself for what's getting ready to come through those doors. It's not just a generation, it's generations. Listen. I know people that I went to church with when I first got saved that are still hurt. And they've been living in Lodabar for a lot of years. They started out in the church just like Mephibosheth started out in the palace. But they went from the church to Lodabar. And they say, I ain't talking about it. I'm not talking about church. Don't want anything to do with church. Okay, well, let's change that mentality here. It ain't about church. It's about Jesus. And Jesus can get to you anywhere that you're at. So we're not here to try to get you into the church. We're here to try to connect you to Jesus, to try to get you into that covenant. Whether you come to the church or not, we want to get you out of Lodabar. We want to get you out of the low self-esteem and the low self-confidence. And we want to move you into a place that is good, that is God, that is full of grace, that is full of mercy. Whether you ever walk through those doors or not. But listen, I'm going to say this to you. When we carry this word outside these four walls, there are going to be those that are going to come, because we're not just going to get them saved, we're going to disciple them. Even if we have to go to where they're at. Stay with me. Now watch. No one was there to give you proper guidance when you were growing up. No one was there to provide a good, solid education or foundation. No one was there to inspire you, to encourage you, and to affirm you, or to pour into you. It's not your fault your employer went bankrupt and you've done everything in your power to find another job. You're losing your house. You lost your car. Your manhood's being affected. Your womanhood's being affected. At times, people are very, very quick. Now, I want you to hear this. At times, people are very, very quick to judge why people make decisions. I don't know about you, but there is a judgmentalness that makes me sick at my stomach. I want discernment, not judgment. I want to be able to discern so that we can help through Christ and not judge through human logic and human reasoning. If I'm making sense, lift your hand and shout yes. I want to ask you a question. How many of you here right now know you've been judged before? Shout yes. How many of you have judged before? There's a big difference between judgment and discernment. And I'm talking about a kingdom concept here, not a denominational concept. I don't preach denomination here. We preach kingdom here. How many of you heard what I just said? We are talking kingdom concepts and principles. That there are hurting people, and what do we do with the hurting people? And I'm talking about those that have been hurt by mistake. Those that have been hurt by accident. Ask me, say, Pastor Tim, have you ever been hurt? Yeah, but I act like I wasn't. Act like that's, the man thing, man up. Whatever. That's not manning up. It's not manning up. I wouldn't have said that 15 years ago. I'm saying that now. Just let it go. If they can live with it, you can live without it. No, that's not Jesus. That's not kingdom. Look at me. That's not Jesus, and that's not kingdom. I'm talking about when there is an accident and nobody wants to talk about it. So nothing ever comes to a resolve. So what do I got to do? Live with this? Do I got to learn how to cope with this? I thought Jesus came that I might have life and have it more abundantly. How many of you hear what I'm saying? Stay with me. Because they're going to come through those doors. And the reason they're going to come through those doors is because we're getting ready to go out there and plant seed. And there's going to be a harvest. And we've already planted seed, and there's a harvest that's coming. It's already been promised that it's coming. And we can already see some of the harvest. Watch this. At times, people are very quick to judge. You know what? Assumption. Whew, man, I could talk about that assumption. Well, I assumed. Well, stop assuming. Because your assumption had an effect. Now watch this. At times people are very quick to judge or assume that people who are in bad situations have had to do something wrong to get that way. Not so. people that have low self-esteem or low self-confidence, people that have a bad attitude. Somebody asks you, now watch this, just very, very superficial here, watch. Somebody comes up to you, they ask you, hey, how you doing? And you start telling them how you really feel. You start telling them your true feelings on the inside and some of the trouble you've been walking, and all of a sudden they tune you out and fade away. How many of you have ever had that happen to you? How many of you ever said to yourself, I got so much on my plate, I can't take any more? What? And then this is how I think when that happens, they really aren't concerned about me. But their plate's full. They don't care, they can't handle one more thing on their, how you feel. Do they really care how you feel or what you're going through? So we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. No words. We're not going to communicate about it. No communication. Come to a place within ourselves. There's nothing to talk about. Nah. Just suppress it. Just cope with it. I don't have anything to say. Just learn to live with it. I was made fun of when I was growing up because I was short. I say it this way now. I was short and healthy. I was short and round. You know how that felt? To be in a PE class and always come in last. And the jocks are up there at the front of the line, and they say things that just cut you to the bone. And so I got mad. I got mad. I got angry. The guy would come up and he would pinch me right here. He would pinch me and call me certain names. And I still know his name. Boy, I'm almost getting mad thinking about it right now. You're mad. And you're not going to talk about it because there is a stubborn will. Never mind, I ain't going there yet. And so he did that, and I went home and I was crying. Man, I was weeping. Some of you have heard this before in our classes. I went home, I was crying and I was weeping, man. I was crying. I bet it was a mad cry. Everybody say mad cry. There's a difference between an angry cry and a brokenness. I wasn't broken. I was not broken. I was mad. Went home, my dad said, what's wrong with you? And I said, look at me. Just, seventh grade, eighth, whatever, what grade I was in. I said, look at me. He goes, well, what's wrong with you? I said, look at me. He said, you want to make a change in your appearance? I said, yes. He went to the store and bought some of these cement weights. Got me an old bench press. And I started working out every day. And all of a sudden, the way I looked on the outside began to change. Things begin to change. All of a sudden, they weren't making fun of me anymore. All of a sudden, I could catch them when I ran after them. All of a sudden, they knew why the back of their head was hurting. How many of you hear what I'm saying? Listen. So I made some changes. It's the same way with our infrastructure. You're going to have to start making some changes. And the changes aren't going to be according to your will. If you do it right, it's going to be according to God's will and the divineness of how He sets a priority in life. How many of you with me say yes? So now watch this. Here we are. Here we are. And how many of you need changes and alterations in a job? Everybody say on the inside. Now stay with me. But many times we don't make the changes because to make the changes, there's some things that go along with that. I don't want to get in that today. We won't go hard and heavy. Nothing to talk about. Just suppress it, cope with it, just live with it. You don't know why a man or a woman act the way they do. You don't know why they respond the way they do. They might have been abused as a child. They might be fighting a secret battle on the inside with addiction or adultery. You don't know what they went through that developed that low self-esteem, that insecurity, the depression, because they will not talk about, well, why aren't you going to talk? And we get frustrated because people won't come. But listen, they've tried before. What's going to make the difference? Everybody say, what's going to make the difference? Jesus and the manifestation of the Holy Spirit. And not just doing it out of your Christian duty, but doing it out of true love. Everybody say true love. Agape love. Stay with me now, watch. A battle that keeps them in turmoil. A battle, misery, sleepless, restless nights. Many won't talk about it. And they say there's nothing to talk about. And sometimes it's because of the shame, because of the guilt, the embarrassment. Nobody understands. I don't trust people with my feelings. I don't trust people with my crippled situation. I don't trust people. Listen, I don't trust you with my broken heart. I don't trust you with my disability on the inside. Are you kidding me? I was rejected as a child. I was made fun of as a child. I'm tired of, listen, I heard somebody say this strong one time. I'm tired of people saying, just get over it. Suck it up. I'm a grown man. I'm a grown woman. I'm an adult, and I'm still not over it. I'm still dealing with it. I'm still living in this place where it's real quiet. Nobody wants to talk about it. Mephibosheth is now a grown adult with a wife and a son. His son's name is Micah. Mephibosheth has lived in Lodebar all these years. Now here we go. He used to live in the palace. I wonder how many times, 5 years old, he still has a memory. 5 years old of playing in the courtyards of the palace. 5 years old swinging in the garden swing in the palace. 5 years old of running down the hallways in the palace and sliding by his grandfather, King Saul, in his socked feet. His daddy coming running right behind him in the palace. But it was at the palace where he got hurt. By mistake. I wonder how many people get hurt in church by mistake, and now they don't want to talk about it. Because they're coming. People that have been hurt, not by the world, but people that have been hurt in church are getting ready to come through those doors. And you know what we're going to do? What are we going to do? In spite of everything, we are going to love, not through human logic and human reasoning. We are going to love with the unconditional, unrelenting, agape love of God. We're going to keep on being there. We're going to stay there. We'll be here. You call me. How many of you hear what I'm saying? Okay, now stay with me. Watch. I don't trust you with my broken heart. I don't trust you with my broken situation. I don't trust you with my crippled situation. So here's Mephibosheth. Now, Mephibosheth has lived in Lodebar all these years. And I want you to see this. In verse 5 of 2 Samuel 9, it says, Then King David sent word and had Mephibosheth brought from the house of Micah, the son of Amiel, from Lodebar. Everybody say, coming out of Lodebar. There's people that's going to come through those doors, and what they're really doing, they're not coming to church, they're coming to Jesus, but they're coming out of Lodebar. Everybody say out of Lodebar. Randy Clarkson, have you been out of Lodebar? Have you been brought out of Lodebar? Listen, I'm telling you right now, Alaneses, have you ever lived in Lodebar? Did you come out of Lodebar? How did you get out of Lodebar? Through the love of God. Somebody showed them the love of God. Stay with me. Watch this. A church that knows how to minister to those that have lived in Lodebar. It was an accident. There was a misunderstanding. Stay with me. Let's do something right now. I want everybody just to lift your hands. Say, Lord, get vision in me for the broken. Come on, everybody say, for the broken. Maybe you're broken yourself. Maybe you're living in Lodabar this morning yourself. Maybe you're wanting to come out of Lodabar, but you still just don't want to talk about it. It's okay. Let's take the first steps and just admit that we live there. Everybody say, there is a way of escape. Come on, shout it out. Shout, there's a way of escape. Listen. King David, this is what it says. King David sent for Mephibosheth. Verse 6. Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David. And when Mephibosheth, I wonder how he came to David. Did somebody have to carry him? Or was he crippled in both feet and he walked like this? Oh, this is familiar. Oh, all this music is familiar. The chairs of people are all familiar. I wonder when he walked into that palace, he walked through the courtyard and he was on his way because he knew his way around. Oh, that's where I was dropped. How many of you hear what I'm saying? I'm talking to somebody here today, and you're here for a reason. You just didn't come here because you chose to come here. You come here because God chose you to be here. I'm telling you. But this is the vision, and I'm speaking it prophetically over this house, that we're getting ready to minister to people that have been dropped. Watch now. Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David. And when he got to David, you know what he did? He fell on his face before David. He fell on his face before David. Look at this. He fell face down and laid himself down in respect. David said, Mephibosheth, and he answered. Listen what he said. He said, here I am, your servant. You know what he thought? I got a feeling he thought, okay, what's going to happen? He had no idea. How many of you hear what I'm saying? He is the son of Jonathan, the grandson of Saul. The bloodline. What if there's an uprising? And he told David, he said, what do you want to do with a dog like me? I'm not going to do anything. There's no power in me to become king. I can't be king. Look at my legs. I come in. I'm not king material. I can't even get on a horse, let alone step up in a chariot. How many of you hear what I'm saying? So when he went in there, I wonder if he thought, man, he's going to take my life. He's going to have me. He's going to cut out the whole bloodline. But listen at David. Listen at David. David said to him immediately, I love this, man. Don't be afraid. You have nothing to fear now that you're in my presence. You had more to fear out in Lodabar than you do here. I want you to feel peace. I want you to feel rest. I want you to be strengthened. Don't be afraid. King David took away Phoebe his fear. Very first thing. He takes away, he says, don't be afraid, listen what he says, for I will certainly show you kindness. I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to love you. I had a covenant with your daddy, and I kept my part of the covenant. I'm not here to take your life. I'm here to give you life. I'm not here to correct you. I am here to show you and to talk to you and bring a respect to you. Listen. David said, for I will certainly show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. Now listen what David says. Listen to this, man. This is so cool. David said this, and I will restore to you all the land of your grandfather Saul. I'm going to give you every piece of property, all of the territory that when Saul was king now becomes your territory. All of the fields will be harvested and it will be brought to you. Listen to this. Listen. The land of your grandfather Saul, and you shall always, listen what David said, and Mephibosheth, you shall always eat at my table. There is a place at my table for you. There will be that place there forever. You will always have a place at my table. Again, Mephibosheth laid himself down. Again, Mephibosheth laid himself down, face down, and said, what is your servant that you would be concerned for a dead dog like me? David didn't have to kill him. He was already dead. The man hadn't talked about life and hadn't talked about the situation in his life, and he'd met a woman, and the woman didn't know about it because he didn't talk about it. I'm not talking about it. I'm not bringing it up. I don't really remember. How many of you ever said you really don't remember when you really remember? Just don't want to visit it. It's painful. I was supposed to be in the lineage of a king. I was supposed to be... I know what it is to live in the palace. I know what it is to feel the anointing. I know what it is to be in a song service and the glory of God moving and flowing to me and through me. I know what it is to be a blessing to other people. But then one day by accident, I got dropped. Listen. You know what David was saying to Mephibosheth? He was saying, bring your insecurities. Bring your low self-esteem. Bring those things that have crippled you for years. Listen what he was saying. You were crippled here at the palace, but it's here at the palace where you're going to return and be restored. Did you hear what I just said? There are people that needs to come back to the church. They need to come back to a church that is breathing and living and flowing in the manifestation of the Holy Spirit and through the unconditional, unrelenting agape love of God. Be restored back into, but they're going to have to, the Holy Spirit is going to call them. And when they come, I'm not just talking about coming to church and sitting in a pew. I'm talking about if you were called to preach, if you were called to teach, if you were called to evangelize, if you were called to be a missionary. I'm talking about if you got a call of God on your life that by accident somebody dropped you and you said, I'm not doing this no more, and you've been living in Lodebar. When you walk through those doors, we want to take you through the process that will lead you back to fulfilling the divine destiny that God has for your life. And you going and establishing. How many of you hear what I'm saying? If you're a musician, then you need to play. If he put a word in you, then you need to prophesy. If you're a singer, then you need to sing that he's given you that gift and called you. I don't want to just see you sit in a pew. There's a destiny to be fulfilled. Let's lift our hands and give it praise. Oh. And I want to say something to you. There's times you might apologize to people and they don't accept it. Did you hear what I said? But you keep walking in the love of God. And you keep putting others. I'm telling you, this is one thing. Jesus said, I prefer my brother, and I'm going to put my brother before myself. They're going to come. They're already coming. There's a revival in this house, and it's personal. Listen. David was saying to Mephibosheth, it was here you got hurt. It's here where you're going to get restored. Bring all your baggage. Bring all your sarcasm. Bring it all. Everybody say, bring it all. Say it again. Shout, bring it all. All over this house, shout, bring it all. Why not start a youth basketball ministry in this house? I know somebody that could do it. Everybody look at me and go like this. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Why not? Stay with me. David said, this is what I'm going to do for you, Mephibosheth. As Mephibosheth laid himself down faceward again, what is your servant that you would be concerned for a dead dog like me? Then the king summoned Zibiah, Saul's servant, and said to him, I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and to all of his house and family. You and your sons, he's telling Zibiah, you and your sons and your servants shall cultivate the land for Mephibosheth, and you shall bring in the produce so that your master's grandson Mephibosheth may have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, shall always eat at my table. Now Zibiah found 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Zibiah said to the king, your servant will do according to everything that my lord the king commands. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table. Listen to this now. He ate at David's table as one of the king's sons. You know what I love about this? And I heard this years and years and years and years and years ago. Said when Mephibosheth came and he sat and he put his crippled legs under the table. He was the same of everybody else around that table. You could no longer see his problem when he sat at the king's table. He was known as one of the king's sons. Stay with me. I'm almost done. He said, I'm giving you back all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always have a place at my table, the king's table. Everybody say the king's table. It didn't say that he healed his crippled legs. And it's not that he healed him. It's not that he received a miracle. He was, listen now, watch this, restored. He was restored, and here's the next word, and made whole. How many of you could take some restoration and wholeness? Lift your hand real high. Come on, I want you to just lift your hands. Matter of fact, I want you to stand to your feet. Just stand to your feet and lift your hands, and we could take some restoration and some wholeness. Over this house, I decree and declare this word into the fiber of the structure and the foundation of this house, God, to minister to those that have lived in Lodebar. They have lived at the palace, but now they had to go, they've been in the church, but they've been, God, minister and bring them in and establish them and do away with the forward and the stinking thinking in some people's heads when it comes to how you prioritize our lives. Mephibosheth looked at David and said, Sir, I'm no better than a dead dog. Why should you be so good to me? He was saying, I'm a waste of time. But you know what David said? This is what David said. But you're part of my covenant with your daddy. And I'm going to keep it. He was next in line to be king, and the kingship was passed on to me. And now that I found that my covenant brother had a son, I'm bringing that son back to his rightful place. Everybody say our rightful place. So come on, everybody shout our rightful place. There was restoration complete restoration and wholeness. This is the thing that gets me. Can I say this to you? And watch, I'm going to go to a sidebar here. Remember over there in Acts chapter 3, where it was Paul and, who was it? Paul and Peter and Paul walking by the gate, beautiful. You know what bothers me? I found out something in studying, and I don't know why I didn't find it sooner. It's just one of those things. But do you know the Bible gives the man, it says, and there was a man who was crippled and could not walk from his mother's womb, who was laid at the gate beautiful. That's what it says. He was laid at the gate beautiful daily. Do you know what it says in chapter 4? That he was over 40 years old. They laid him at the gate of the church. How come nobody ever took him in? Why did they lay him at the gate? Why did they lay him at there? So he could beg of alms. This is the best place if you're going to be a beggar for the rest of your life, and it looks like you're going to be. Just lay here and beg. No. If you see him laying out there, bring him in. How many of you hear what I'm saying? Bring them in. Because the bottom line is, you know how many people out there that God gave them a destiny, but they were dropped accidentally, and they're saying, I'll just stay home. I'll get up tomorrow and I'll go to work and I'll pay my bills this week, when they're supposed to be playing the piano and writing songs as the angels of the Lord deliver those songs to them with melodies. And hey, you hear what I'm saying? Do you know how many people out there are waiting for an opportunity to fulfill their divine destiny in God? But they don't want to talk about it. They were dropped by accident. Nobody ever meant anything bad. Listen at this. Mephibosheth himself was to always eat at the king's table. Mephibosheth ate at King David's table as one of the king's sons. David gave Mephibosheth an invitation to come out of Lodebar. An invitation to come out of Lodebar. Come out of Lodebar and let's talk about